Okay, welcome everybody. As you all know, welcome, there's a couple of new faces, welcome. Nice to have you here. We are, as normal, Kev is videoing, taping, recording what we're doing tonight. And Les is our timer up the back because he likes to hide. He pretends he's timing up there. Because we don't have, as we've got 10 metres tonight, we normally have about 15 or 16. So that means you get a little bit longer than normal. You can have 5 minutes. So everyone's scrambling to see what longer bits they can do. So, before we go into that, I'd like to introduce our upcoming Untitled, issue of Untitled here. Which bow is in? This is our short story collection. This has been about 2 years in the making. A few things got in the way. So it's finally here. And we are going to be launching this, not this Saturday, but the next. And there are invitations up on the table. So here at 3 o'clock on Saturday the 27th, I thought I had the wrong date for a second there. So everyone is welcome to that. Door price tonight is going to be a copy, so you will be getting one of the first copies. Bo's the only one who's actually got a copy because he's in it. But so whoever wins this tonight has the first copy. They just arrived today. So that's exciting. And we're I don't know if anyone has heard of Laurie Steed. He's a really well-esteemed, highly esteemed short story writer. And we were lucky that he is actually over from Perth for something at the Wheeler Centre. What's he here for, Les?
Me. He's launching the other anthology, Shibboleth. Yeah.
Okay, so he's down for that, but he's over here for that, and that was just lucky. We didn't know he was going to be here for that. And so Les asked him to launch our next issue of Untitled, and he said yes, because he's actually a really nice guy, and he and Les are pretty good friends, so we kind of called in a bit of a favour there. So, as you know, this is going to go up on YouTube either late this week or early next week. So if you don't want to be up on YouTube, please tell Kev so he doesn't put you up. A couple more little things. We have it up on our table a list. If you'd like to be on our mailing list, we send out a monthly newsletter that has lots of great tips and stuff about writing and publishing. And there are also our dates for workshops coming up. But I wanted to let you know about a one-off workshop that we're doing called Mastering Your Book Marketing, and that is on Saturday the 10th of September from 10 till 2. And then you could go to Len's book launch after that. What time's your launch?
I start recording at 2.
2. So you could almost do both on the same day. Len's going to be launching his poetry collection at St Margaret's Church Hall. Is that what you call it? The hall? Next door to the church, which is a gorgeous little hall across from the Eltham pub on that same day. But the good thing about this is that it's all about social media and marketing your book. So if you want to get up on Facebook and Twitter and using your email list and all of that kind of thing to advance your promotion of your book, this is really good. She's even got a segment in this day on Amazon Kindle and all the little hints and tips. You know, it's not just about uploading your ebook. There's all the little tags and things that you can do extra within Amazon to help get your book seen on the internet. And then we have our Karma King Lake Writing Retreat in October. This is going to be a really great weekend. Les and I run this. We only take 10 people, so there's information about that there. So enough of the advertising. We're going to get into our readings. So, who will I start with? I'm going to start with Shell. As I said, I like to mix it up a little bit. And Shell did so well last month. I think she might have stooged us because she said she's really terrible at this, but she was awesome at it. Yes, so old when you isn't it? I think you enjoyed that too much, Liz, having that power. Okay, thanks for that, Shell. Now you can relax. Andrea. Where's Andrea sitting? Andrea is going to read a poem called Craft.
The portrait of fate made little sense in my world of chaotic knowledge. Death and birth, akin to the stroke, brush or thigh, make exorcism of existence. The quilt touched my child, 1,000 yet one dream. The name, timeless, fragile, a great burden, untouched for closeted decades. The tapestry awed my being, the puppet god in maternal guise, woven, shunned, windowed the mist, trapped between the threads, left to lie under your cast-up grace.
I'm just going to turn the fan down because that's all I can hear. Okay, so 3 more sleeps and this boy gets married. So this is the last time you'll see him as single man. Bella's going to read a story or the continuation of Seed from Stony Ground.
Hello, hello. Okay, so this is continuing the piece I've been reading for a few months, which I might as well subtitle by this stage, The Ballad of the Sad Priest, but straight into it. Here's a story, Dennis, he said to the silent phone. A parable. A man spreads seeds across his land, but as he walks along the seeds, they don't all land in good soil. Some land on rock or hard salt rocks, and they don't have moisture to survive for long after sprouting. The sun burns them up. Other seeds are eaten by birds or get choked by weeds. Gavin hobbled into the lounge room and turned off the TV to hear himself think while he spoke. He kept speaking to Dennis. Maybe the words would reach him, even without the phone. I know so far it's just the story of a farmer who's terrible at his job, but stick with me for a moment. Those seeds within the parable are supposed to be like the word of God. When the saplings fail, it's because the word has not been heard. You don't take the blessing like the hard ground doesn't take the seed. Sprouts may grow in the stony ground but dry up in the sun because they don't take deep root or they get choked by the weeds. But there are some seeds that land in good soil. They take root, grow strong and bear fruit. What would Dennis ask at this point? He would probably wonder if he were one of the good seeds, or maybe what kind of seed Gavin saw himself as. Either way, Gavin would cut in immediately to qualify that truth is I hate that parable. I know it's just a simple portrayal, but still gives no chance to change that outcome. The seed that lands in stony ground is doomed from the start, as if the rain would never come to soften the soil. People are more flexible than that, right? We don't all bloom in good soil, but we can bloom in the rocks if there's no other option. Thriving against the odds is our specialty as a species. A coughing fit before Gavin could continue. This was like one of his sermons of old. His voice was raspy as he resumed. But I remember that whole bit with the sower because right after that story in the Bible, Jesus is asked why he speaks in parables. Remember when we talked about parables, Dennis? Simple stories with good intentions. Well, Jesus responds by quoting prophets and all that malarkey, but the gist is he believed the common people could only understand these concepts through stories. You can say that's elitist thinking, but I've always remembered that part more than all the other parables. And it's still true today, if you ask me. We'd rather learn about love, life and solidarity through rom-coms than through books and philosophy. He was tired. Dennis may not have heard the sermon, but either way, there was nothing left for Gavin to give. Just stories, parables and fables and lessons about the way of the world. Just stories. A sermon then or a movie now. Gavin had always immersed himself in stories and invited others to drink with him while he silently drowned. And for all his denial, for all his notions of having saved himself and forged a new path as a priest, the trial had come and he was found wanting. The seed from stony ground. At least he knew himself now, as he never had before. But he knew that wasn't the end of it. He knew he could bury himself underneath those stories, but they couldn't define him. They never had. He'd passively soaked up other people's extrapolations all his life. Even his pursuit of the faith was chasing stories, parables to fill the gaps in his own fortitude, then passing the words on to others as they would sit obediently in the pews, lambs of God. But he was a lamb that had been saved, and he was more than a stony ground seed then. He knew that. And he could be more than that now. And maybe it was about time he told a new sermon. Trouble was, he needed an audience for it. His words echoed around him as he sat down at the dusty kitchen table, doodling sentence fragments onto a Safeway catalogue with a pencil. They needed to be heard. That would have to wait until next Sunday. Thank you.
Thanks, Bo.
You've got time.
What did you say?
You've still got time.
You still got time.
My wife is nervous.
Who next? Oh, I think it's appropriate, since there's a wedding coming up, that Len is going to read 3 love poems. Yes.
Yes, I don't always write about doom and gloom or death and destruction. Sometimes I find other things to amuse me. Gentle. There is a gentleness within your voice, in the sound and in the words, speaking of beginnings, of springtime, hinting at the warmth of the summer to come. I lived through the autumn, and now, here in my winter, I still listen to the gentleness of your voice. I still listen for your love. Angel. Within a misted morning, a white horse drifted, gliding between the ethereal shades of trees, drawing both you and I into its dreaming. Poised inside the moment, held by the breath of mist, I heard your voice rejoicing, becoming the breath of an angel, caressing, embracing, suffusing my soul with the joy of you. This one's really about life, and it's to do with the ending of life too, so it's got a little bit of death in it, but it's different, you'll see. And it's really based on the concept of a warrior king. And it's called My Island. The sea mist blurred my sight, and I knew the time of renewal had arrived. In the almost silence, I whispered my final orders. Light the pyre here, my warriors. Let the flames soar. Sing the dirges here, my warriors. Let your voices roar. On this shore, my warriors, say your goodbyes. Then, take me out to my island. Take me out. My awakening beckons. Lay me down with honour. Cover me with yellow and red wildflowers. Let the sighing wind and the murmuring waves surround me. Lay me down, my warriors, sword in hand. Let my island embrace me, my warriors. Take me out and let me live.
Thanks, Len. Did you want to tell people about your launch? I know I mentioned it, but I didn't really give details.
Saturday the 10th of September, 1:30 it begins with there'll be an introduction and a reading at about 2 o'clock, St Margaret's Church.
Diane! Where are you hiding? Hiding there. Diane is going to read a blog piece conversation with God.
I have a very tiny blog online. This was the first piece. It's a collection of musings of my life, so things that happen, how I react, what I think. So, a conversation with God. I haven't had a conversation with God for quite some time now. In spite of the fact that I was raised Catholic and taught to believe from a very young age. When asked to fill out my religion on a form, I would always write Catholic. In many ways it influenced certain aspects of who I am and gave me a sense of belonging. The ritual of church gave me a sense of comfort and safety. Throughout the years I used to pray and ask for help when I needed it, and I guess like many people, I also used to bargain and try and get the things I wanted. By the time when I was 5 and I prayed really hard for a Barbie doll at Christmas, I prayed and prayed all year, made deals. If you send me a Barbie, I won't argue about bedtime anymore. If you send me a Barbie, I promise I won't feed my piece to the cat all the time. If you send me a Barbie, I will try to share her with my sister sometimes. My fingers were crossed on that one. Miraculously that year, all my praying paid off. And on Christmas morning, I woke to find a brand new, shiny, anatomically incorrect Barbie under the tree. As for those promises, I was 5. When I was 7, we lived in a small remote town and my sister and I had to be sent away to boarding school for our education. I prayed so hard that the school would be ripped apart in a hurricane or some other destructive freak of nature, so I didn't have to go 1,000 kilometres away to school. I promised I'd be good, not fight with my sister, tidy my room, but sadly I lost that one and was sent away to school, where I learnt that there was a hierarchy of importance and that 7-year-olds were way down the bottom of the totem pole. I used to pray every day that we would be rescued. Eventually we were, but not before I had developed an extremely unnatural fear of fruit salad. But that's another story altogether. There was a price to pay for that rescue, however. Nothing for nothing. That's how it goes, right? Just before I turned 8, I woke up one morning and realised we had slept in and that we would be late for school. And I went and woke my sister up. Thinking her mother had forgotten to set the alarm, we both headed to her room to wake her up. She looked to be sleeping peacefully, so we didn't want to shock her into waking up, so we spoke to her in a whisper. She never did wake up. And even though I prayed as hard as any 8-year-old ever has, I think that day, at the tender age of 8, a tiny little piece of my faith and belief in God was taken away. As the years wore on, I made deals on what I thought were really important issues at the time. When I was 16, I had a crush on a boy at school. I prayed that God would let him like me and fall for me instead of the pretty blonde athletic girl in year 11 that all the boys loved. I needed extra praying on this one because I wasn't exactly at my best physically in my later years of school. I was a bit gangly, had braces, a very modern perm. Still, a girl could dream. If I made a deal with God, maybe, just maybe, he would look my way. I promised I'd study harder, keep my room tidy, see a theme here. But sadly, as before, my prayer was not heard. I was left heartbroken when he chose another. I also remember swearing I would do anything God wanted if he would only let me grow up and marry the lead singer from the Bay City Rollers. That's probably wise not to make that one happen. As I moved into adulthood, experienced the death of my grandfather, then my father, I really began to question the big picture. Again, I wasn't sure what God's grand plan was when my father was diagnosed with cancer and was given 6 months to live, and my grandfather, who was one of the most intelligent people I knew, was diagnosed with dementia. My grandfather had a strong belief in God. It defined who he was. He lived his life with Christian values and never missed a Sunday morning Mass. Even towards the end of his life, he truly believed that God didn't send us more than we could cope with. Who would have thought, some 23 years later, those words would be running through my head as I was holding my sobbing sister in my arms, trying to console her after she had suffered the worst loss any parent could imagine. Right there, in that moment, when my sister fell to the ground and I feared she'd never get up again, I stopped talking to God. For 3 days before this, I had pleaded with him, begged, bargained with him, asked him to send me a sign that everything was all right. I remembered repeating the words please over and over and over again, hoping that if I used my manners enough, I would be heard and our worst nightmare would not come true. I don't know if I could have prayed more, begged more, bargained more. I remember telling him he had enough of my family with him. Please leave us this. Please don't take another one. My prayers went unanswered. For 3 days after this, I yelled, screamed and swore at him, but I didn't talk to him. I cried, told him what a bastard he was, yelled at him for being mean and cruel and heartless. I screamed that I hated him and I would never ever ask him for anything again. To this day I haven't. I struggle almost every day with the decision I have made. Being raised to believe in rituals of the system, heaven and hell, life after death, I don't know what to believe anymore. The Black Saturday bushfires changed me and everyone else affected by them profoundly. Some people turned even more to their faith, some who had never had it found it, and some, like me, turned away from it completely. I guess we all have to do what we do to survive. However, all is not lost. To steal a line from a Geraldine Brooks novel, I cannot say I have faith anymore. Hope, perhaps. We have agreed that that will do for now.
Oh, you're not going to sing now, are you, Lydia? Joan. Joan has a poem called The Performer.
We disagree.
You're not going to perform?
You might be sorry. I do know one poem, or one, whatever you say, recitation called Bitten. But I'll leave that to you. Actually, just because we've got plenty of time tonight, I've only got one poem. The Performer. She silently glides to centre stage with dignity and charm. Her warm and sparkling smile and a stray tear disarm her harsher critics. Accompanied by songbirds' throated trills, she loosens folds and frills of brown, greens, red, with burnished gold, and tumbling out come generous gifts of flowers, fruits and grain for her adoring public, a harvest to sustain through coming rain. Her plants aside, towards the wings, espies the next performer lingering there with ice blue eyes, long snowy beard and frosty hair. She feels a blast of cold. Her prompters bid her leave. Reluctantly, she gathers up her gown, and auburn tresses cascade down to sweep the boards. Amidst applause, autumn makes her exit till next year.
Thanks, Joan. Pamela is going to read some of her memoir from Spain.
Pamela might even dance a fandango.
Yes, we've never actually had a sample of your dancing.
That's right.
We might have to have that one day.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I need costume. The costume's a long one.
Oh, that's just an excuse. You had.
Very feeble.
I seem to remember you having some feather.
You've had it before. You've got it.
Did
Well,
you?
what about the clown number?
Yeah. Next time, can you do something next time? We won't put
I'll
on the
think
spot
about it.
tonight.
And the point is, I'm so much older. This was 50 years ago. Oh,
Just a little taste.
okay.
Christmas party.
Me. You are naughty.
I'm not naughty, am I, Ken? Yeah.
Well, the last time I wrote, I believe I was talking about my contract in Scotland, and I did a pantomime there and a huge big show called 8:05. Then I left and went to London again looking for work, and this continues up from there. Hola, meaning hello, is it a girl's name? Yo for I, could be a yo-yo ball, whereas Elios and Elias, meaning they, sounded more like ice creams. The strange phonetics were incomprehensible to my befuddled brain. Slamming the teacher self-Spanish book onto the shuddering wooden table, I wondered if I'd ever mastered this peculiar language. My idea was to try to understand these gallant, crazy people. I gazed at the dull French landscape, listening to the constant yanking and clanking of the heavy wheels as they tore the train forward, and reflected for a few moments how quickly the events had changed before joining the other dancers in the next carriage. Jodie, Mother and Popsy were delighted to see me again, but within days after my arrival in London, a theatre contract for a year to dance in Spain was advertised. The audition was easy, and packing my coveted new suitcase, I happily said goodbye to my mother's taunts. Don't bring back a matador. Sleepless, I travelled since the crack of dawn from Kettering. There'd been another choppy crossing on the ferry, and the nightmare of being with a bunch of strangers, crossing chaotic Paris to change trains from Gare du Nord to Gare du Sud. It was almost dark as I passed by the sleeping heads and settled into my seat. I'd lost consciousness. The jolts and the hissing of the train woke us up as it came to an abrupt halt at Buran, the border town between France and Spain. Struggling onto the bare platform, we proceeded along the unending path to customs and strained to put our luggage onto the Spanish train. We settled our weary bones onto the hard, uncomfortable seats and zonked. The complete journey would take 36 hours, and we were only halfway to Madrid. Spain has a torrid, tremendous, tumultuous, dark history of takeover wars from the Romans to the African Muslim Moors and horrific anarchist religious rebellions. It was once a mighty empire, boasting wealthy kings and queens with splendid palaces and castles. In the 15th century, explorers sent to South America ransacked the lands, purged the natives and stole gold, their fingers dripping with blood. King Philip II of Spain sent the greatest fleet of ships in history to conquer England and was defeated. Due to the Napoleonic Wars in the 19th century, it was no longer a superior race. In 1966, it was a republic headed by the small, dreary, balding Franco, a reincarnation of the devil, who treated many Spaniards as aliens, hunting them down for mass killings. Triumphant in 1931, he executed a further 200,000 he considered his enemies. Hitler loathed him. Guernica, a small ghost town in the north, is all that remains of the atrocities and devastation, and has been immortalised in a painting by the Spanish painter Pablo Picasso. It hangs in the Prado Museum in Madrid. In darkness, we miss the beauty of the magnificent, eloquent mountains of the north in Basque Country, where rebels had fought during the Civil War. The land was smothered in parched dry earth, the sky a clear blue with a hot blazing sun in the distance. Yellow stone villages seemed abandoned with no sign of life, with the odd tree refreshing the landscape. Yet the towns revealed several church spires peeping out of a massive, tall, structured medieval buildings. Our group consisted of 12 girls and 4 boys, dancers, and that daybreak we continued to get to know each other. Dark, frizzy-haired Nematala Gadala, known as Nem of Egyptian parentage, fascinated me, and with her bubbly enthusiasm, we agreed to share digs together. Passing through Don Quixote territory, Nem screamed out, "Look at that!" In the distance, arising above the uninspiring yellow plains, a massive poster of a black bull appeared, and they continued intermittently until we arrived in Madrid. Remembering the film Carmen and the Spanish dances I performed on stage in England, I sat and dreamed. Vibrant fiestas with flamboyant gypsies, partnering flamenco dancers, swishing their long polka dot costumes of passion while clacking their castanets, and beating their feet in unison to a background of melodious guitars. Powerful bulls, fighting for their lives, with rarely a chance of survival, pitted against richly clad matadors, whirling their cakes to the roar of the crowds. Yes, I was determined to experience it all. Thank you.
Angus, did you decide whether you're going to read? Is that someone's pen? Is that good? Oh, it's mine.
After listening, and you can knock me off. Guernica, the pub percussive played a big part in my life 11 years ago. I was in Canada, and they were having the exhibition of the great curtain which he painted in 1926 for one of Jean Cocteau's play in Paris. And at the opening was the presence of the director of the drawing department of the Louvre. I met him in the director of the Ottawa National Gallery. He said, "Oh, look, Marcella's got some interesting drawings for you." Anyway, I met him and he liked it. And he said I was one of the very few selected to exhibit in the following year at the Louvre in conjunction with Picasso's erotica work. He was at the end of his life, he's done, almost pornographic, but today's things, but beautiful drawings and paintings. With one exception, they also had the Guernica, because he painted that at the same time as his erotic work. So, in the sort of drawings that I do, sort of fitted with it. And he said, "Do you write poetry?" I said, "Well, not really, I'm not a poet, but like everybody else out on the right." And he said, "Why don't you write some poems to go with your drawings?" And he said, and I'm sure that, so he found someone that would pay for the printing, which was the Ottawa University. But being a good practicing Catholic, I was having a bit of a, second thoughts. So I found this way out. I wrote under a female name. So, and some of the works, some of these poems, everything in the poems, it happened. Not necessarily to me, but they are all based on truth. That happened either in Canada or in my little island in Genostra. And as a matter of fact, one of these poems was written to our drawing, similar to the one that's down there in there. Okay. An opening. A recurrent pain, the sake of abstinence, until one night, her need unquenchable, endless, she draws her thigh against his soft parts. There's slow mobility against her skin, but avoidance has become his body's habit. He kisses her breast tenderly, cuddles her head to his chest, drifts into a dreamless sleep. Stretched there awake, she senses her desire open into a long corridor beyond where we could go. Cracks. In the backyard near midnight, she unties her bathrobe. Particles of moonlight drench her face, trickle between her breasts, converge in her groin and run down her thighs. Cool quicksilver pooling between her toes. The porcelain moon cracks. She drops the bathrobe and falls to her knees. Green kimono. We dance in a darkened room to French music from a cheap radio. You drape me in a green kimono, orange and red flowers. I found it comes. Your hands sliding through side openings, caress curves and hollows. kimono never comes off. The clock. Beloved, our bed is a huge clock. We are its human hands, joined at the centre. Inside me you trace the angles all around the clock. I am your day, you are my night. My day, your night. You can cut me any time on this.
It's just keep going till you do.
Yeah, this was actually written in Genostra. So I'll read the second half. Like a brass key cut for a steel lock, he approaches me. Hazel eyes velvet, horse-like nostrils flared. He strokes my shoulder with small, insistent breaths. My breasts swell, their flesh electric. Blood unleashed, charged particle that circuit from him through me and back through him. It changed into my body, drawing inward, clenching, quivering, opening, till deep in the recesses of my core a rusty latch unlocks. Stay up here with me all night, here on the edge of the world.
Thanks, Marcello. So Marcello is having an exhibition here in October, the month of October, and he's also going to be performing lots in the Seniors Festival, aren't you?
Yeah.
So maybe next month you could bring some
Yeah, well, the book
information.
should be ready by then.
Yeah, great, thank you. Angus. I don't know what Angus is going to read, so I'll let him tell you.
Hi guys, I've just got a bit of my book that I'm writing, so I'm just going to read that out. It's the start, so there's no real back knowledge or anything. So, the thrushes, grosbeaks, and many other birds of the eastern forest sang as they preened themselves. The bees hummed in the air as they searched for nectar, and bucks clashed antlers in the distance. The late afternoon sun, as it always did, managed to weave through the canopy of pines and oaks and reach Alina's olive skin. Yet, in the final days of autumn, the rays were weakened, and Alina shivered. "That's why we need the firewood," Father told her. He placed a strong foot on the centre of a fallen branch, held the end, and pulled. The branch surrendered with a tearing crunch. Alina sighed. "I'm not strong enough to do that, Father. Can't I just use my axe?" Father chuckled. "You can collect the smaller limbs, though. Kindling is just as important to a fire as the logs." "I know that." Alina paused, knowing she had to get the phrase just right. "A fire is a being, just like you and I. We had to learn to stand before we could run." "Are you using my own words against me, my dear child?" Alina felt Father's pride warming her like a second son. "I'm just using what you taught me." "Is that all I've taught you?" "You taught me how to hunt and how to cook. I can track, even if 3 days of rain have washed away the footprints. I can tell if a mushroom is poisonous or not without looking at the roots. And most importantly, I know to put the milk in after you add the oats. If I taught you so well, why do you want to use your axe so badly?" Alina quickly tried to think of an answer or a witty reply, one that Father would undoubtedly appreciate, but none came. "Fine, I'll get the kindling." Alina collected several handfuls of twigs, using her shirt as a pouch in which to place them. When she could carry no more, she returned to Father. One of the barrows was brimming with wood, the earthworms and cockroaches squirming at the base. Alina guessed the pine had fallen several weeks earlier and knew she had no need to use her axe. "I'll tell you what," Father said as if reading her thoughts. "I'll get the rest of the kindling. You should grab your bow and see if you could get any meat for tonight's soup." Alina beamed and raced to the second barrow, but it was empty. Her grin quickly faded as she could see her bow resting against her bedroom wall. "I left it at home. I could set some traps though." "No, that'll take too long, and I'm getting hungry." "Have you got any spare dried beef at home? We could throw some of that on into the soup," Alina asked, hoping to redeem the meal. "No, we'll save that for winter." "Then I guess we'll have to make the soup without meat." Father laughed. "We? Fine, I'll prepare the soup without meat." "Good. Now let's get these barrows, then head home." Smoke was billowing out of the chimney of their wood cabin as the pair returned home. Several squirrels wandering about the porch bolted away, climbing up the nearby trees. They were almost an equal part of the cabin as the walls. On the roof, Father pointed, "Look." 2 autumnal brown finches stood on the rim of a nest atop the cabin. While one of the birds remained vigilant for possible dangers, the other regurgitated food for the cheeky mouths of the freshly hatched chicks. "They're adorable," Elena exclaimed. "We should move the nest into one of the other trees." "But won't that disturb them?" Father shook his head. "The parents won't take their eyes off the nest now the eggs have hatched. We have to move them before a wind carries the nest off the roof with the infants inside." Elena felt a sudden sense of urgency to move the nest. The bricks which made up the roof had been placed there many years ago, and the weather had seen the flat sides fade to curved and unstable edges. It wouldn't take much for the nest to now slide and fall off. "We'll move it another time," Father said. "Help me take some of this firewood inside. It's going to be a cold night." Elena collected some logs, lugged them inside, added to the fire, and placed what was left to the side. She rested in a chair and rocked slowly as she held her hands by the flame. When they were warm, Elena started preparing dinner. She sliced potatoes and leeks and tossed them into the pot, sprinkling in some herbs. Elena let the pot boil for an hour and then tasted the soup. "So?" Father asked. "I should have remembered my bow," Elena answered in a disappointed tone. She felt Father's hand on her shoulder and watched him dip a spoon into the pot. He blew gently and tasted for himself. One of the best you made." He patted her back and left the kitchen. "Thank you, Father," she said, already feeling better. "I'm getting some beer. Do you want anything, dear?" "Just a glass of water, please, Father." Means more beer for me," Father bellowed. Elena gave him a look which she thought held authority, but, judging by Father's continual laughter, held none. "Not too much tonight, you hear?" "Yes, sir," he mocked. Elena rolled her eyes as Father filled a jug with beer from one of his many barrels and placed it on the table. He left and returned a moment later with a pair of glasses, one filled with water. He was about to sit down when Elena pointed a finger at him. "No sitting yet. Bowls first, please." Father grumbled and collected bowls. Elena smiled victoriously as she ladled the soup inside, the salty scent of chives filling her nostrils. There. That's good timing.
Thanks, Angus. Lillian.
Okay. This story is called "The Day My Mother Froze the World." When I got home from school, Mum was in an even bigger flat than usual. There was a burning smell coming from the kitchen and she was rushing from her computer to the stove with her earplugs in and the phone hooked to her apron, saying desperately to the person on the other end of the phone, "But why is it telling me you are not connected to the internet if I haven't done anything to disconnect it?" I stepped over the vacuum cleaner that was standing abandoned in the hallway and headed for my room. A basket full of dirty washing stood at the top of the stairs, as if Mum had been just about to take it down to the laundry when she'd been interrupted. I could just walk around stuff like that, it didn't bother me at all. I had a degree in ability to not see mess, but it really upset my mother. She thought the whole world could see all the dust balls of dirty toilets and stuff that she could see, and she didn't seem to understand that for some of us, it just didn't matter. When I was able to catch her eye, I reminded her that it was parent-teacher interviews tonight and she just about burst into tears. Luckily Dad arrived then, so he stood in front of the stove in his suit, stirring the thing that was burning, while she rushed back to her phone and the computer so whoever it was could talk her through what to do about the internet. And then I got to eat fried pan barbecue dinner while they rushed out to the interviews. The house was really nice and quiet after that. I opened a few windows to get rid of the burnt smell and propped myself on the couch with some ice cream to get rid of the burnt taste, and watched a couple of my favourite shows. As soon as they arrived back home, Mum tripped over the vacuum cleaner that was still standing in the hallway where she'd left it. Although I don't think she'd got to the vacuuming yet, it was probably out as a promise to herself that she would do it. My mum is like that, full of promises. I could hear her using words that I wasn't allowed to use, but I didn't say anything, just nicked up to my bedroom real quick so I could start on my homework before she realised I'd been sitting in front of the telly for 2 hours. When she finally came upstairs to say goodnight, I'd done enough of it to get by. And anyway, I was heaps more interested in these really cool flashes of lightning that kept lighting up the sky than in doing any more homework. Mum sat next to me and we gazed at the darkness and wowed the lightning together. We both jumped when the thunder started because it was, honest to God, like artillery going off right above our roof. Mum wrapped her arm around me and said, "It's so nice to just sit for a minute like this. I feel like I haven't stopped all day." She sighed. "Wish I could have just one day to myself, a day that no one else has, so I can catch up." Just as she spoke, lightning flashed again. It was so close by we both started. Right after that, it started to bucket down a really heavy, drenching rain. Mum kissed me goodnight and stood up yawning. Well, better get back to it. I'll fall asleep if I sit still for too long. I brushed my teeth and flopped into bed, thinking what a relief it was to be a kid and not have so many responsibilities. I woke up out of a strange dream where I was at some sort of art museum that was full of wax statues. I'd been walking around looking for a real-life person and only finding wax models. Luckily, it was one of those dreams that starts to melt away as soon as you open your eyes, and 2 seconds later you can't remember the first thing about it. I kicked off the covers and stood up. Outside, the sky was blue and clear, but when I went closer to the window for a look, I could see that the ground was wet, so it must have been raining all night. I hadn't heard a thing after my head hit the pillow. I wandered downstairs for some brekkie and found Mum all dressed for work with bags under her eyes, scrambling eggs. "Is Dad up yet?" she asked me as soon as I walked in. He's usually gone by now, but he was so deeply asleep when I got up that I didn't have the heart to wake him. "Nope," I said, sticking 2 bits of bread in the toaster. She frowned. "I better wake him then. He'll be mad if he's late. Here you are, this is ready." She switched the stove off and headed out, and I found a plate and tipped the yellow mushy stuff onto it. Then I parked myself in front of the toaster and waited for my bread to pop. "Jake!" Mum screamed from upstairs, and I jumped, and my toast popped all at the same time. "Quick!" she screamed again. So I ran, taking the stairs 2 at a time, and found her standing next to their bed as white as a sheet and staring at Dad with her hand to her chest. "He won't wake up," Mum hissed. "I've called him and shaken him, and he won't wake up." "Is he?" I began, frozen to the spot. "No, not dead," she gushed. "He's breathing. Look, but it's as if he's in a coma." She touched Dad on the cheek and bent over him, listening for a heartbeat, feeling for his breath. Dad laid his head a little to one side and one arm flung out across the bed, eyes shut fast and his mouth open a little. It was making a little grumbly, snoring noise, and his chest was rising gently and falling. He was definitely not dead. "I'm going to call the doctor," Mum said. "You finish your breakfast." I was buttering my cold toast. Yuck, I hate cold toast. When Mum came back into the kitchen with a puzzled frown on her face. "I can't get through. No one's answering at the clinic or the local hospital or the ambulance service." She stood by the bench, drumming it with her fingers. "Try next door," I mumbled through a mouthful. "Bob used to be a paramedic, remember?" "Oh, you angel," she exclaimed, brightening up at once. "Why didn't I think of that?" She dashed out like a mad thing, and I finished eating and went upstairs to get dressed. I looked in on Dad again as I went past his room, but there was no change. He was still out like a light and still snoring quietly. Okay, I'll stop there.
You have to finish next round. Belle. Da-da-da-da. Lucky last. Belle is going to read some varied microfiction.
I don't know how varied it will be, but it's microfiction. Okay, they're both very short, obviously microfiction. The first one's called The Truth of Fact versus Fiction, the under 10% over 90% rule. I'm writing a memoir about a short story, about writing a memoir. The numbers are doing my head in. That's it. The second one's called Outfoxing the Natives, and you'll have to excuse my terrible Cockney accent. I think I write it a lot better than I speak it. Anyway, here we go. "What's this then?" Soho Red nosed the husk at his feet. "Witchy grub," said Magic. Red squinted at the possum high above. "Which? Blimey!" "Well, where is she then?" said Red. "Who?" "The witch," said Red, rolling his eyes. "The one what ate the grub." Magic scrabbled halfway down the trunk. "Oh, mate," he said, "it's in the black." "Bollocks," said Red. "You calling me a liar?" Magic was growling now, right in Red's face. "Nah," the fox mumbled, around a satisfying mouthful. "I'm calling you breakfast." "Idiot," he thought. "Even I knows them witchamacallits is what?"
Thanks for that. Is there any announcements I've forgotten, or does anyone have anything they'd like to announce? Anything happening out in the wide world? Anyone wants to tell us about? Have I forgotten anything? Besides the raffle, have I forgotten anything? Les?
Next fellowship.
What was that? Next fellowship. Oh, so some of you may know that Angus, who got up to read some of his novel, has been our creative fellow this year. Still got a couple of months to go, so we're not kicking you out the door yet. But the next application will be opening in October. So we will have, what are we now? Next month we will have application forms. We've decided that it's just going to be for writing. It was sort of mixed last year, and it was a little bit hard for us to work it out when it came to choosing a fellow. So we've decided, because we're really a publisher, that writing is going to be where the fellow is going to be. The fellow, male or female, obviously. So yeah, just keep an eye out for that. So this was Open Mic Night number 36. Starting to feel old. And as I said before, the readings will be up on YouTube, probably early next week because we're pretty flat out at the moment. And I will now pull out a number, so get out your little tickets. And please hang around and have a chat. You don't have to rush off. We've got plenty. I can tell there's lots of cake still. We haven't been eating enough cake. So, this is our prize for tonight. Some fresh little short stories. So it is C70. Oh! Ta-da-da! So thanks so much for coming, and hope to see you again next month.
So they're very